What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. We're back at the fire pit. It's fire pit time. So in this video, we are going to talk about the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court made some final decisions this week on some cases, finishing up their kind of year term here of cases to look at and view. It's kind of weird how they do that, but whatever. And these are kind of interesting. There are some surprise, but then some that it's like, yeah, that we kind of figured this was that's the way they were going to decide. And it also lays into the fact that this, showing that this court is very much conservative and very much in favor of doing their best to try to appease Trump and the Republicans, but also maybe trying to look like they're being fair. And what they're trying to be fair on is interesting. So we're gonna talk about these decisions. I do have a little cheat sheet printed out to help me out with to help me go through them and keep up, make sure that I'm staying on point. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me here. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Everything in the you can find all the links in the description down below to this channel, to the other channels, to check them out, subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. It helps, it's free for you, helps out the channels tremendously. If you would like to do more, you have Patreon there, $2 a month. You can support any of the channels that you would like. To help grow those channels, help grow Patreon, help grow the JMD Nation. And also now, if you're a Patreon member, you get a discount on the new merch. Okay, so all those links are in the bottom, in the description, to Patreon, to the new merch. I have new merch for every channel now. So if you go over there and check it out, look at it, get something, please. That would be amazing. Any support you give is very much appreciated, and I thank you very, very much. And if you're turning, you're freaking amazing. Welcome back. Okay, so. Yes, the Supreme Court, they've made some previous decisions on some things, and now this week we've come down. There was a release. I think it was Monday and Tuesday that they released the decisions on some stuff. I want to say it was either 4 Monday and 2 Tuesday. Or Wednesday or 3 and 3, one or the other. Either way, it was about 6 decisions that were made, and the split basically come to half and half for this week. Now, when you add in the previous couple of them, then it's actually an overall win for Trump in all their decisions. But for this week, the final decisions is basically kind of half and half. So we're going to go over. First, all the ones that Trump or Republicans won, and then we're going to do the ones that they basically lost. All right, so first on the list here is the transgender athlete case. Right here we have the court upheld state laws restricting transgender girls and women from competing in female sports, okay, female school sports. The majority reasoning here, the majority found that states have broad authority to regulate school athletes and concluded that the challenged laws did not violate the Constitution under the applicable legal standards. The dissent argued that the laws unlawfully discriminated against transgender students and conflict with equal protection principles. You basically have the overall impact here is similar laws in many states are more than likely to survive legal challenges. The decision will influence future cases involving transgender rights. So basically what we had here was there were 2 cases that were kind of consolidated together here. And I kind of feel like personally that both cases, the nuances of both cases were a little bit different, and I feel like they should not have been consolidated like this. But nevertheless, you had in one case a transgender girl trying to play in a girl sport. I don't remember the state or the sport that it was, but she was trying to play in the sport, and either the school or the local laws would not allow it, were restricting her from doing so. So they sued to try to get that, because they feel like they were being wronged. And this was a student where she had started transitioning, um, uh, from third grade. Okay, she'd been starting transition from third grade, taking puberty blockers and other things, going through all the stuff that you would go through at that age. She, of course, probably ultimately one day eventually fully transitioning. Maybe, I don't know. That's on her to decide. But nevertheless, she had not went through puberty. Okay, even though she was born a male, she had not went through the puberty stage because of the puberty blockers. So therefore, in the argument around her having a male advantage, which oftentimes the argument is pointed around puberty and the male physique and having advantages over the woman's physique because of puberty and blah 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 blah. This kind of did not fit that case, because she had not went through puberty. So therefore, it felt, for me, it felt a little odd. This was a situation where I feel that the whole transgender argument, and these two cases will show that the transgender argument is very nuanced, and they should be on a case-by-case basis, I feel, more often. And where one case might feel a little bit weaker than others, on trying to make an argument around whether or not they should be accepted into a sport or not. I know there are some who feel like it's like an all or nothing kind of thing in both sides, but I kind of fall more in the nuance here, because in the other case, this was the case involving a college student wanting to play in a college female sport when they had just basically recently started their transition. So they had went through puberty, but then was trying to transition. Okay, so again, I don't know the details around either case, like the full details around either case, but it feels like the two cases are a little different in their standing, based on the period in which transitioning was happening, whether or not quote unquote male enhancement or male advantage would fall into the argument or not. I feel like one probably could be argued, but then the other clearly not. So I feel like these two are very nuanced, but and different, but nevertheless, and in both cases, the more lower level courts had argued that the states or local authorities, school district, or whatever it was that had ruled, that was restricting them from doing so, from performing in the sport, that they did not have that right, the constitutional right, to prevent them from doing so under constitutional protections. And so it was lifted up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said actually they do. So that is a win for now, for the Trump and Republicans, those who or conservatives, or even, I mean, anyone. I'm sure that even some liberals fall into this category of questioning around transgender ability. But this, I mean, the dissent here arguing that it is unlawful to discriminate against transgender students and conflicts with equal protection principles, which it does, in my opinion. And I think that there needs to be a large, again, it's just not a cut and dry case in every case. Also, the fact that we have not really dug into, okay, well then how do we allow equal protections for transgender students, all right, and giving them the ability to play sports, because I mean, say in the case of the first case where they had not went through puberty, do not have the quote unquote male advantages of puberty that you try to argue, but you're basically trying to say they should still have to just play male sports, but that would put them at a disadvantage. Even by your arguments for a woman, it would put them at a disadvantage for a male to play male sports. So there needs to be a discussion around something. I don't know how we find a medium here, whether it's based on the nuances between when and how and to what extent, or to what each person has experienced so far, like in a biological sense, or whatever the case. But something needs to be, and whether or not we just create a whole new category of sports. I don't know. Like there needs to be some sort of more nuanced approach than just a cut, like, good, bad, black, white, like male, female, this whole dry two one way or the other argument, because there's clearly a gray area in this discussion that needs to be litigated out. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be, something, so that we are making sure that everybody's actually being given equal opportunity to play sports, as a child, and have a good experience and have a happy experience or whatever. Even if that is from a case to case, like from argument for like the some sort of democratic process within the actual local community, or even within the school itself. Do the rest of the students accept it or not accept it? Like something like, there's many different directions and avenues that we could, do to try to work on this situation. But nevertheless, okay, all right, moving on. The National Republican Senatorial Committee versus the FEC. This basically was the case that J.D. Vance brought to the courts. And this is around political parties and candidates, and how much, basically how much continuity and funding and other stuff that they could have from an actual national committee and the candidate or whatever. Basically, this is a win for Republicans. It was a 6-3 split, which is pretty much the conservative split there, versus liberal. The federal limits. The holding is the federal limits on coordinated spending between political parties and candidates violate the First Amendment. Majority reasoning: political parties and candidates naturally share goals. Okay, it feels like the same argument on like around the Voting Rights Act that they're trying to make here. So restrictions on coordination burden protected political speech. The dissent warned the ruling opens another avenue for large campaign spending and weakens anti-corruption safeguards. So basically the impacts here are parties can work much more closely with candidates. Candidate spending is expected to increase, and candidate finance law is substantially altered. So I personally don't know all the details about this case, but for me, when you are, it feels like allowing a candidate in the major political parties or whatever, it's basically allowing for the committee to automatically or have an even stronger stance on supporting, endorsing, and literally funding a candidate in any particular race. That's what it feels like to me here, and that that feels a little corrupty, a little corrupty there. That's a little bit much. So anyway, that overall is a win. I don't have a whole lot to say about that one. I would really need to dig in a little bit deeper on that case, but it feels like that's a little bit of a little bit questionable, a little bit sussy, and kind of again opens up more for money in politics. And that for me is I already do not agree with. The big major win, though, is Trump versus Slaughter. This is the FTC removal case, all right? Trump won in this one. This is a 6-3. The holding was that the court overruled the 1935 precedent, Humphrey's executor. The president may now remove leaders of most independent executive agencies without proving cause. Okay, that's quite important. The majority was Thomas Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Roberts, and then of course the dissent was the liberal side, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson. The majority reasoning: Article 2 vests executive power to the president. Agencies exercising executive power should ultimately answer to the president. Congress cannot insulate executive officials from presidential removal simply by calling them independent. All right. This is where, okay, we've had this is where Trump is trying to fire all these members, leaders of all these different agencies, federal agencies, and the argument is here is he doesn't have the executive authority to do so, because these executive and then that him being allowed to do so is corrupting these agencies, because these agencies are supposed to function without political leaning. They're supposed to be bipartisan, independent of any kind of political leaning, and because these agencies are established by Congress, not the executive branch, even though they were placed under the purview of the executive branch, they were put in place by Congress themselves and deemed as independent, and not have a political leaning, because to have a political leaning would put the American people that they represent at a disservice. That's the argument here, and what the Supreme Court has basically said is that, well, actually, because it's under the executive power and the president is supposed to have all-encompassing power. I mean, we've already had them already previously argue for stronger executive power, giving him more impunity and giving him more authoritative power previously. This is just adding to that, giving him even more presidential executive power. And basically, once again, nullifying a process that Congress actually puts in place and designates, but then says that the president has the ability to override any positionings that are supposed to be unpolitical, and he can put anybody in the place that he wants to. That's basically what this is saying. Your dissent: the liberal justices warned that Congress deliberately created independent agencies. The ruling threatens agencies designed to be insulated from political pressure. It upends nearly a century of administrative law. All right, and this impacts agencies like the FTC, the NLRB, the SEC, the Customer Protections Agency, the Labor Agency. It's multiple agencies that are supposed to run and function independent of any kind of political pressure. Okay, they're not supposed to decide or make decisions or work in some sort of political, with some sort of a political agenda. Basically, they're supposed to be independent, solely just based on policy, the rules, or whatever. Not, you know, well, we're going to favor this or they favor that because we, you know, whatever, our political leanings. And it is considered by many scholars to be the biggest expansion of a presidential authority since the 1930s. So this was a major win for Trump and the Republicans. For Trump, period, for the executive branch, period. And the crazy part about this is that this again puts in a precedent of a president having a major authoritative power, which you must understand that, and allowing this to happen and allowing this to become the norm, the acceptable definition for executive power and executive abilities. You're also saying the same thing for when the opposition gets in power. Okay, you're allowing for a Democrat potentially becoming president and doing the exact same thing. Now, for those of you wanting to support Trump in having all this power, would you want the same thing? Okay, I personally wouldn't want a president, period. I don't care whether they're Republican or Democrat or whatever, to have that type of power. Okay, that's the reason why we have the three branches, so that they can all, like, basically check each other. And if you are allowing one over the other to have ultimate powers over the others, like what Trump is trying to do and what the Supreme Court is allowing him to do here, this is a precedent. This is a concern that should pretty much scare everybody. Okay, this is something that could affect everybody at some point. It's just wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. All right, so now going on to the three that they actually lost. Okay, one is interestingly enough, even though the court decides that the president has the ability and the agency to remove anybody in any federal agency that they deem they need to, because of executive branch power. The funny thing is that then they turn around and argue that, well, except for one place, the Federal Reserve. What? Why? I don't. So, this is a temporary loss for Trump on a 5-4 decision. The court declined for now to allow President Trump to remove the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. All right, while the litigation continues. This is really just, while litigation over her removal continues on the lower courts, the federal court is just basically making this sort of shadow docket decision here, that because the lower courts had decided to allow her to remain in the position until litigation was completed, and the government was trying to argue no, she should be removed until it's decided. That moved up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's basically just backing up the lower court that actually we do agree that she should just remain in place until this is litigated out, and then whatever decision's made, if you want to kick it back up to us and then we'll make an ultimate decision on the actual case, then fine. That's basically what happened here. So even after expanding presidential removal power with the Trump versus Slaughter, the court treated the Federal Reserve differently, signaling that the Fed's unique role in monetary policy may justify greater independence. So this like it's like the court is deciding, the Supreme Court is deciding, okay, yeah, we don't have a problem with Trump just firing whoever the fuck he wants, and all these agencies that, you know, do things and for regular people, you know, the poor or working class and whatever. Like, if it affects them, by Trump just, you know, putting in there whoever he wants to either, like, you know, completely manipulate the agency or try to destroy the agency outright for its removal or whatever, no problem, we don't care. That's up to the purview of the president. But when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the Federal Reserve and monetary things, then we have a bit of a problem. But because now you're fucking with potentially even our money, and we don't like that. That's the way this comes off. And that's like, oh really? You don't mind fucking with the money of regular ass people and poor people, but fucking with your possible money, that's a problem. Yeah. So, why the impact here is that Lisa Cook remains on the Federal Reserve Board pending future proceedings. The court left. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, give me a second. Okay. The court left open to possible addressing the issue more fully on a future merit of the case. So yes, again, there's a kind of a temporary loss there because Trump was basically declined the ability to just outright fire the Federal Reserve governor. So sorry, Trump. You know, you don't fuck with their money, I guess. You can fuck with ours, but not theirs. So I guess you don't have full control of the Supreme Court. All right, next. This was in the absentee ballot, and this was actually including, this is with the Mississippi case where I live, okay? And Mississippi won in this, or ultimately Trump lost and the Republicans lost. This was about mail-in ballots. So ballots postmarked by Election Day may continue to be counted after Election Day if state law allows. So what you had here was, you know, in Trump's push to try to remove, do what he can to make mail-in ballots harder to be approved in elections or whatever. The idea here was that if mail-in ballots come in after the Election Day, regardless of whether or not they were predated or not, if they literally arrive due to, like, whatever reason, whether they were mailed late or arrived late due to the postal service or whatever the case, if they arrived late after the election, that they were not to be counted, period. That was what the federal government was trying to push for here. And the Supreme Court basically was like, yeah, no, we're not going to allow that. If as long as it is post-dated, as long as the date on the ballot was dated before Election Day, and like sent in the mail before Election Day, and at least arrives within 5 days after the election, that it will be counted. So that is a big win. On mail-in ballots for against Trump. So that was major. So the Mississippi's existing absentee ballot system remains in place. Similar laws in other states are on firmer legal footing. So yeah, and the funny thing about this is I feel like Mississippi may have even brought this case questioning whether or not, not even in defense of the people of Mississippi. I question whether or not Mississippi actually brought this case in defense for Trump, like just to be the guinea pig, like Louisiana did with the voting rights. I can't help but wonder whether or not Mississippi was trying to do that, and the Supreme Court actually did the right decision here. But whatever. It's a win. It's a win for people all across the country when it comes to mail-in ballots, and a little bit of a knife, figuratively speaking, to Trump's agenda and trying to rig the elections in his favor. So the big one though, the big one was birthright citizenship. All right, this come down to a 5-4, so you had one conservative actually dissent, which was interesting. Here, or actually not dissent, but actually rule in favor of Justice John Roberts was a majority. Sotomayor, Kagan, Kavanaugh, and Jackson were all of the majority. The dissent was Clarence Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Barrett, which is the usuals. They are, especially Alito and Clarence Thomas is one of the most ridiculous, and Alito. They are up Trump's ass because, you know, they get all kinds of benefits from them. The holding for this is that the Trump held that the president cannot end birthright citizenship by executive order. All right. The majority concluded that the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment continues to guarantee citizenship to nearly everyone born in the United States. Because what was going here is you had Trump did that executive order trying to limit birthright citizenship. They've made the claims that it was only for slaves, and that that it wasn't for immigrants coming over here and giving birth and blah 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 blah. But the argument here is that no, the Constitution did not distinguish a particular race or a particular social situation or whatever the case. This was to be like anybody born here. Okay, the Constitution, the majority reason in the Constitution, not the president, defines citizenship. More than 125 years of precedent, beginning with the United States versus Wong Kim Ark controls. All right, this is where there was Wong Kim was one that was questioned. He apparently was born here in the United States from immigrants, Chinese immigrants, I think Chinese, Asian immigrants, or whatever. And then they went back to Asia for a little bit of time, and then when he decided to come back to the United States, they were basically arguing that he did not have citizenship status to be here. So it went to the courts, and Supreme Court then was like, no, actually, he was born here, and due to the Constitution, he actually is a United States citizen, so he was permitted his citizenship and or whatever. That was, back then. The dissent here, and that president has remained, all right, since then. The dissent here, and understand, that's 125 years ago. Certainly a whole lot closer to the, the origins, the oranges, as Trump would say, of our founding fathers, of the beginnings of the country, that would, have a standing in an argument around citizenship, right? Anyways, the dissent argued the court should have allowed more room to reconsider the historical meaning of the 14th Amendment, and criticized the majority for relying too heavily on precedent. Are you fucking kidding me? That is like the whole purpose around the justice system, is to accept and take in precedent. And especially on changing something. Like, you use precedent more than anything when it comes around to changing something. This is just a weak ass argument from the dissent on something that should be clear as day. It is in the Constitution. There is no question around this. If you're born on this fucking soil, you are a U.S. citizen. I don't care. All right. It's absolutely ridiculous that this is even an argument. We want to argue that that people have the right to a piece of land because it was written in in a book thousands of years ago that they supposedly did have some sort of right to that land, so therefore they can go on that land and remove the modern existing people of that land, and we completely accept and back that, and act like that is authority and the right to do so, but yet here you're born here and that's not, doesn't make you a citizen. I mean, it seems a little wild to me. The practical impact here: birthright citizenship remains unchanged. Millions of American citizens citizenship statuses are unaffected, and this is one of the Trump's administration's most significant immigration initiative that the Supreme Court ultimately blocked. And you know, if this would have been the one that they went against, holy shit! I mean, it would have uprooted, like, it would have uprooted the whole standing of the Supreme Court, in my opinion. If that one was not ruled correctly, then like competence and trust in the Supreme Court would have fucking been thrown out the window. I mean, hands down, it would have been thrown out the fucking window. So bravo on that one fucking thing that they actually, you know, that they went right. But understand, it barely went right. It was a 5-4 decision on birthright citizenship. Are you fucking kidding me? The most easiest case the Supreme Court could have possibly seen this entire year, and they still split damn near down the middle. That shows how partisan, how politicized at least 4 members of the Supreme Court are. That is just absolutely ridiculous. So yes, this week was basically a half and half. But when you add in the Voters' Right Act and the temporary protective status stuff that was earlier this year or in the end of last year, I mean, Trump, they have given Trump in the Republican Party a whole lot of wins. The conservative justices are doing exactly what they were placed there to do by Trump. So they are trying their best. They are giving all that they possibly can through some of the most weirdest opinions on changing and uprooting these different things for Trump and the Republican Party to gain favor with them. But I mean, but barely skirting by with a few dissents, a few rulings against them. It feels like it kind of feels like just to make them seem fair, make them seem like we're not going to just do anything for him or for the Republicans. But again, even that pushback is weak. When on birthright citizenship of all things, only one conservative, actually 2, I guess, 2 conservatives, Roberts and Kavanaugh, 2 conservatives decide to change and flip on that. I mean, that is still crazy to me. There again, 4, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett. What are you doing? What are you there for? Are you serious right now? You're willing to uproot 125 years of constitutional ruling on birthright citizenship. That is wild. That is absolutely wild. But at least Trump didn't get all his wins. And the crazy part about this is that Trump and MAGA, on those few losses, they will lose their shit. They will flat out fucking lose their shit. As a matter of fact, in the same fucking argument, I'm willing to bet even in the same rally speech, Trump will praise them for what they approved, but then turn around and condemn and call them all kinds of fucking names and say that they're traitors for these, you know, opposing positions, opposing decisions. The extremity there. But that's exactly what Trump is. If as long as you do what he wants, he will praise you to the heavens. But dare oppose him or dare go against him on anything, and he will criticize you. He will cut you down, call you anti-American, throw you under the bus and everything else, all kinds of despicable names. And he could be talking about the same person in the same fucking discussion. It is insane. And MAGA will go right along with him. Yeah, I mean, I think the transgender athlete discussion needs to be, there needs to be way more nuance around that. It isn't just a cold cut case, okay? It's not just, you know, male not in female or female not in male. I mean, hell, there's even a more argument in like acceptance of female and male than male and female. Like it's so weird to me. But nevertheless, that needs to have a much better discussion. The National Republicans Committee against the FCC, I don't know all about that case, but when you're making a argument for there to be kind of more consolidation, or at least the allowance of more consolidation from a national party to one specific candidate, that seems a bit sussy, a little cringe, a little corrupty. So I don't particularly agree with that one at all. And of course, going and allowing Trump or any president, period, to have the executive authoritarian power to just remove and fire people just because they aren't kissing his ass in these federal agencies, or you know, won't do his bidding, won't like ruin people's lives, vulnerable people's lives, just because he wants to, you know, like eliminate an agency or wants to claim that there's fraud within that agency or whatever. I mean, that's just not how there should be. Again, removing them without reason, without any kind of proven reason as to why they should be removed. Just unilaterally, you're gone. To an independent agency that's not supposed to be politicized, and then the ability to put somebody in that place that is solely politicized to favor whatever agendas he wants. That is authoritarian, okay? That is dictator-like conditions, and that should not be happening. So yeah, again, and of course you already know my opinion on the Voter Rights Act. We didn't really talk about the protection status stuff back when it did it. I don't really know about that one, but yeah, that's what happened this week. Again, I feel like there's definitely a problem with the Supreme Court. There needs to be a full-on reformation of the Supreme Court. I mean, from the fact that we have one of the lowest number Supreme Courts globally. I mean, there are almost every other nation has way larger Supreme Court like entities or whatever. to have a better representation, and even having more would allow you to kind of like split up cases, and so that we don't have the same people all the time or whatever. I mean, you were able to delegate between different members or whatever. I mean, there's a whole lot of advantages to actually having more, but then even around just the argument of the fact that they just rule themselves when it comes to ethics or whatever. They don't have their own rules, or they're able to establish their own rules, and if they want to break them, then they can break them. There's nothing to push back against them in conflicts of interest or anything like that, where any other ruling judicial body has that. The Supreme Court's the only one that doesn't. And I mean, things like there's multiple layers to the Supreme Court that needs reformation, because they are sorely partisan for one, and then sorely not held under the same discretions and not held under the same criticism of the rest of the judicial system. So there's definitely needs to be something change, but unfortunately, I don't think there's anybody that can change them but themselves, and that doesn't seem to be something they're interested in. So I don't even know how that could be fixed. But let me know what you think. And again, while he did win a little bit, he didn't win on everything. And maybe even some of the most important things he didn't win on. Or at least the most important things that will very much directly impact a lot of people, like the birthright citizenship, mail-in ballots and stuff. Yes, the agency issue and firing is a big deal. But again, that is, somebody else can get in there and completely change that back around. So, but the other two is very much, I mean, election protection and citizenship protection. That should just be a slam dunk. So thank you very much for joining me, and let me know what you think. Until next time, peace. ClearTalk, I'm out.